Welcome and thank you for joining 504 Connect call. Before we begin, please ensure you have opened the WebEx participant and chat panels by using the associated icons located at the bottom of your screen. Note that all audio connections are muted at this time. If you require technical assistance, please send a chat to the event producer. And with that, I'll turn the call over to Linda Riley, Chief of the 504 program. Linda, please go ahead.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us on today's 504 Connect call. We've got lots of really good updates for you today, and we thank you for dialing in and for joining us by web. Also, too, later in the call today, we'll have more of the 504 team for Q&A, but we're going to go through all the presentations, and then we'll open it up to questions. We also have a new protocol that we're going to have on future calls. On future calls, we're going to ask that you register to dial in because that will help us to better serve you after the event. So thanks for helping us. We're going to adjust a couple of those dates with our new protocol, so you'll be getting emails on those soon. And now I'd like to turn it over to our Deputy Associate Administrator, Mr. John Miller.
Thank you, Linda, and thank you to everybody out there who's joined us, lenders, CDCs, and other partners, our district offices. We appreciate your attending today's call. I'm going to go over real briefly and quickly the lending numbers to date in the 7A and the 504 loan programs. These charts are as of May 31st of each fiscal year, so as of the end of May, and a comparison year over year. We've seen a decline in lending in the 7A loan program. Currently, the 7A volume in dollars, as you can see on the bar chart to the right, is down around 8%. And we have the strong economy to thank for that. We know that lending in conventional markets is actually up for the year in real estate and commercial industrial lending. So we think that the strong economy is helping to increase commercial lending, but it's all therefore decreasing some of our 7A lending. We have seen an increase in the 504 lending activity year over year, and we believe that is in response to the 25-year debenture that we introduced, and also fixed interest rates. We know that some banks are putting some of their customers in the fixed rate 504 product, and we're happy to see that. The interest rate on all of the 504 maturities, the 10, the 20, and the 25-year, are currently priced below prime. So that's a very attractive rate for customers. So with that, again, I'm glad I had the opportunity to kick this off. I want to thank all of you for your participation and what you do in our programs. And I'm going to hand it back to Linda.
Well, the next presenter that we're going to have is Steve Kaczarski. He and Sherry McConville did an amazing job with the OPSM team at NATCO, at the NATCO Summit, and we actually got a nice little note back from NATCO. So for those of you who weren't at the event, Steve and Sherry wanted to take a few minutes to tell you what's going on and what's causing so much excitement in the 504
Well, thanks, Linda, and I'll go briefly, just kind of skim over what we're up to. So first off is to thank the industry and for all of you as partners. We've been doing a lot and doing it fast in conjunction with Linda's team and folks in Okra and many people in the industry through the Champions of Change and B and her leadership and Kat, all the great work they're doing both as a steward of the industry and also through Ventures, their software provider. So we're doing a lot, so we appreciate all your patience. And what we talked a lot about at conference is now today we're fully electronic, so all of our platforms are in the same place as 7A. There's consistency throughout. We are in a data center that's backed up 100% of the time. We haven't had any downtime in the last couple of years, so that's very good. So we have the stability portion of it. And then on to the more exciting stuff, what we're working on in terms of pilots that are building toward full production, one of which is corporate governance. So today I can report that we have just about 95 CDCs signed up. for our repository to be able to exchange documents, and again, thank OCRM for all the hard work they've been doing, because when you send a document through our corporate governance repository, we need folks on the OCRM side to consume it, bring it down, and deal with it. So, and they've been working on that as well. And we continue to expand the number of documents that we're including in corporate governance, exchange that information one time, kind of like a library approach with OCRM, and then if any other people throughout the agency need it, they can check into the repository, whether it's general counsel, et cetera, and use it. So that's moving along nicely. If you have not signed up to participate in that, please feel free to do that. You can send an email to me or to Sherry McConville, or we have other contacts through the CSA. I should also mention that Guidehouse, who runs the CSA for us, has really been the labor behind all this work and leveraging capabilities in the CSA infrastructure to do this good work. So we're thankful for them as a good partner. Also, 504 closing is moving in the right direction. We've done a lot of work over the last 3 or 4 months on finalizing a requirements document that includes sign-offs from everybody in the agency, including the general counsel, on how we would move forward with closing, leveraging that repository, and for the first time allowing CDCs to have their own counsels, log into our systems and participate in the closing process by exchanging documents. So we're excited about that. That build is going on now and will go on throughout the summer, and toward the end of the summer, we'll be kicking off a pilot or bringing folks in to be able to start using our repository and using the E-Tran components to be able to send documents in for closing. So we're looking forward to that. Also, just a quick highlight on Lender Match. We've done a bunch of new enhancements there, one of which is refine the search criteria. So one of the common suggestions for improvement with Lender Match was for folks that are digging through leads that come to them from borrowers that they would get a lot of information. And we've enhanced the search criteria so you can really drill down on specific parameters that you're interested in, whether it's business age, loan amount, industry type. So you're able to really get into the types of deals that you'd be interested in from borrowers. And then coming at the end of the summer, beginning of the fiscal year, we're going to have the ability to move it closer to kind of a fintech application. So within that Lender Match shell, you'll be able to request more information from a borrower and turn a Lender Match into an application. So the infrastructure set up to do that. We're moving closer to that, and we'll be doing some testing at the end of the summer. So that'll be the next step in Lender Match, so being able to turn that lead right into an application in E-Tran. And now that we have most of the CDCs, all the CDCs, leveraging E-Tran to process originations, we think that'll fit well. And for our community advantage lenders, that'll fit nicely into how you're already processing loans today. So those are just some of the things we got going, and again, if you need more information, if you have any challenges on what you're working on with us currently, if there's any issues you have with the CSA and some of the enhancements that they're pushing out more on the collection side with ACH, et cetera, send an email to Sherry or I, and we'll make sure we follow up on it. Anything to add, Sherry?
No, you did a great job.
Is that good? Is that okay, Linda? You think that covers most of the stuff?
You did a great job today, just like you did at the conference.
All right. Thank you. All right. Who's next?
So my boss, Diana Seaborn, is in Rhode Island with the district directors and the RAs. So she's asked me to just give a quick policy update. We didn't want to rehash everything that we did on the last Connect call in the webinars. We just wanted to hit the highlights of what the hot topics were from NACO. And then we actually have some people who are going to go much more in depth on some of those hot topics. We're going to have Ian and his team with SLPC going more into some of the processing hot topics. We're going to have Andrew Bergmanson and Tanya Miller to go in more depth in some of the OCRM hot topics. So let me just share with you things that Diana wanted me to emphasize today, just to keep these things on your radar. The 504 Corporate Governance Rule comments are due June 14th. I checked regs.gov today, and there's one comment so far. So we have a feeling others are coming. So just as a reminder, we know the summer vacations and Memorial Day weekend, people are going to forget. So we just want to make sure we mention it today, get those comments in, so then you can enjoy your summer. So next is we continue to get feedback, as John Miller said, about the immense popularity of the 25-year debenture. Diana said over 80% of our loans are being done through the 25-year debenture. That's great. Paul and I have been very careful in how we're messaging the dollar per job increase because it became effective for loan processing immediately, November 2nd when we announced it. But there's actually a little bit of a lag time that in fiscal year 2020, because you have 2 years to do job creation, that you have to adjust your annual reports. So we'll have all the forms updated by then, so we'll also send you out reminders. But as far as processing the loans, the dollar per job took place immediately, as did the opportunity zone change, which is new. There is another thing that we're not going to go in on today's call for OCRM, but was very popular, and that's that independent loan reviews can be every 2 years unless OCRM just sees a specific issue that they have to address. So that was very popular at the conference, but today OCRM's team is going to talk more about reporting. And then on the things that are on the agenda to come, Ginger Allen on the team, who many of you got to know sort of long distance on the last call and got to know her in person at this last summit, she's working on helping us reorganize 50-10-6. And so more to come on that in short order before the end of the fiscal year, but that's a big project we're all very excited about. And then the 912 clearance process that you've heard us talk about has been evolving over the last year. We're getting to a new phase of automation in that, so we're going to have a notice that will be coming out soon, and we'll be able to, give you more details on, people have said, what can we do about electronic fingerprints, using those more often, and that notice will give us more guidance. There's one thing that is not going to change, and that is send this file for now. There are a lot of concerns that send this file would go away before the new E-Tran closing process is in place. And send this file is fine. It's not going away, and we would not take it away as an option for sending files without some sort of notice or advance. So just know that you won't see anything going away without some sort of procedural notice on the E-Tran closings. And Sherry and I will be working very closely together with Nancy Capel, who's also working with us on the closing update team. So more to come there. So that's pretty much what we had from OFA. Diana always sends warm wishes to everyone and wants everybody to have a great summer. And we are certainly grateful for her leadership in OFA for all the amazing things that she's let us accomplish this past year. So next we have the team from OFPO, and June Kim is going to have Hien Nguyen to give the presentation. Hien?
Thank you, Linda. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us on today's Connect call. It was very nice to see many of you at the NACO Summit a couple of weeks ago. We appreciate it very much when many of you approached us and offered your kind compliments, encouragement, and support. Also, thanks to your participation and interactions during the sessions. The sessions went very well, and they were very beneficial and successful. We believe that these sessions further strengthened our bonds and shared and improved our program knowledge, and that will definitely help us achieve our common goals of providing capital access to our small business owners. Now, for those of you who could not make it to the NACO Summit, in the next few minutes, we'll have an opportunity to go over some of the processing tips and best practices discussed and dissected at the conference. So with that, I would like to turn over to Zane Costello. Zane is one of our supervisory loan specialists here and was one of the presenters at that NACO conference. Thank you again.
Thanks, Ian. Yeah, the NADCO Spring Summit was a lot of fun for those of us that got to travel out to it. It was great putting some faces with some names finally. And just like we did there, I'd like to congratulate everybody on the phone and thank you for the quality of your submissions. Here at SLPC, we've recently been able to hit 60% first pass approvals. So what that means is that every 3 out of 5 loans that comes into the center, we're able to get to an approval without a screen out or decline. We might make a quick phone call if we have a couple of quick questions, but 3 out of 5 of the loans, like I said, we're getting to a loan number without any screen out or decline. So thanks again for the quality of your submissions. We really appreciate that. The goal that we were looking for with the Spring Summit was to get that 60% number even higher. So we identified a couple of areas that we see a lot of screen outs and declines in. The first one of those you can see on the slide is projections. So you can see the statistics there. We have a lot of screen outs and declines based on projection-based loans. So with the next slide, as it goes to projections, what are we looking for? What causes the issues? Believe it or not, more often than not, it's not the actual numbers that are presented themselves. It's the explanation, the assumptions behind the numbers. Those are what causes most of the questions, that most of the screen outs come from that. The CDC providing an analysis is very helpful. So if the CDC tells us why they feel that the projections are reasonable. And then obviously this varies on the type of project. You don't really need that in-depth of analysis on a project where, say, a small business is opening a second location. Maybe you have a restaurant and they already have their original location. They'd like to open a second location across town. We have a historical record of how the first restaurant's doing. We can see some projections. Maybe historically the first restaurant can cash flow the majority of things, even if the second restaurant doesn't make any money. Not as much analysis needed on that. But whereas a different case would, of course, be any sort of startup business, especially, you know, a large loan. We dispelled a myth at the symposium that I'll talk about again here. For years, we've been saying that we process $500,000 loans the same as we process $5 million loans. There's no difference. We process everything the same. It's not true. We actually process larger loans. We look at them a lot more closely. We like to see more support, more information to back those up. When you get to startup loans, if you have any sort of independent verification, any market studies, any historical trends or independent data, potentially feasibility studies, those are always great to provide. They always help us to get to a yes. Okay? And then the next slide, we also at the symposium, we talked about the servicing aspect of it too. So sometimes even when you have that loan number and you got the loan number, you got the approval, every now and then you still need to readdress the projections if certain things happen. A couple of those that we talked about, sometimes no adverse changes require changes or you need to resubmit new projections. Increase in the project size. So if it was approved as a $2 million debenture, now it's going to be a $3.5 million, $4 million debenture. We probably need to see new projections on that. Any other significant changes to the size and scope of the project also would potentially require us to see new projections. One of the examples that we talked about at the symposium was we've seen situations where we have a loan that's approved with 2 operating companies, and it's a projection-based loan, and then it comes in for a servicing action, and the servicing action is to remove one of the operating companies from the loan. So where we initially approved it, we had 2 operating companies. Now we only have 1. Since the original set of projections were based on the revenues of 2, we now would need to see new projections for the new just 1 operating company that's moving forward with the loan. Okay? So the other item we talked about that we feel can help us to increase that first pass approval rate is affiliation. I know everyone's favorite topic. It's the #1 IPARA audit finding. And what I mean by that is we find when we do IPARA audits on files that not all potential affiliates were addressed. It's also a very common screen out and decline reason. So one of the things that I always like to talk to people about, and what we talked about at the summit, was when we're looking at affiliation, we're really just looking at three main things. There's some rules. You know, you have to have to qualify for an SBA loan and the 504 loan. There's the size standard. You have to be a small business. The size standard is based on the affiliate group, not just the operating company or the EPC. So we need to know who the affiliates are so that we can analyze the size standard correctly. Same with the legislative limit. So there's a legislative limit on how many SBA loans an affiliate group can have. So we need to know what the affiliates are for that. And then the last one is also related to government debt and SBA loans, and that's, we want to know if there's any prior losses on government loans, if previous SBA loans or government loans have paid as agreed. So I've seen cases where we've had CDCs submit credit memos to us where they say, you know, we don't think that this entity or this entity is an affiliate, but we've included it in because it makes no difference. And that's what we find out a lot of the times. I mean, a lot of times whether or not an entity is considered an affiliate or not an affiliate doesn't have an impact on the eligibility of the loan. There's no size standard issue, there's no legislative limit issue, and there's no issue with previous SBA loans not being paid as agreed. Okay, so next slide. So what are we looking for with affiliation? Really, there's affiliation by a couple of different ways. The first way is, of course, affiliation through ownership. In the credit memo, and now in E-Tran 2, obviously, but in the credit memo, we'd like to see for the EPC and the OC, we need to have 100% of the ownership of those two entities accounted for. We'd like to discuss any familial relationships between those owners, and know of all businesses that the family members operate with each other outside of our operating company. Obviously, complex ownership structures can be very detailed, very cumbersome. Anything that you can do to help simplify that for us, some of you, and we appreciate it, have done some pretty great charts so we can see with just a visual glance who's who and who's related to who and who owns what. That really helps the loan officer to be able to determine whether or not it's an affiliate or we think it might be an affiliate. The other thing is, please, when you're determining that something is not an affiliate, give us an explanation why you think that it's not, why your determination is that it's not an affiliate. That helps us to understand your way of thinking, and a lot of times we will agree with you when we see that. Sometimes we don't agree, unfortunately, but most of the time we will. The more difficult one is really affiliation through control, and we talked about this with several examples quite a bit at the summit. And one of the examples we used is if you have a situation where you have three owners, you have a 40% owner, another 40% owner, and a 20% owner. If in the credit memo there's no talk about any sort of control or how control for this company is derived, we sort of default to the fact that there needs to be a 51% majority owners have to agree in order to make a decision. So in this case, if you have two 40% owners and one 20% owner, the 20% owner, even though the 20% owner has just as much control as the two 40% owners. Because if the two 40% owners don't agree, the 20% owner becomes the tiebreaker. So they have a degree of negative control in that respect. If you talk to the borrowers and they explain to you, you can have the same example. Maybe one of the 40% owners, or maybe it's even the 20% owner, is the president of the company. They're the person who the corporate documents give the control to. It's not in their business. It doesn't have to be 51% of the ownership to get to a decision. It's whoever they deem to be in control, the managing member in some companies. Then that's the person with control. The other owners would not be deemed to have control in those scenarios. So those are some of the things that we talked about and some of the examples we gave. Again, we also went through affiliation as it relates to servicing actions. Ownership changes, it's important when you have ownership changes to redo the affiliation analysis. and do it now for the new ownership structure that's being provided. When you do have ownership changes, please remember to add the appropriate guarantors. And then the last but not least, occasionally no adverse changes result in the need to redo the affiliation analysis. All right, I think that's it for us. Linda, back to you.
Mention is that the refi questions that used to come here to HQ are now all going to the questions box. So please, on refi, also send those as well. Next, we have the Office of Credit Risk Management, who are going to give a presentation. We have Andrew Bergmanson and Tanya Miller, who are representing Susan Strike today.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Andrew Bergmanson. I'm your 504 financial analyst for Regions 1 through 4. I'm here today, as Linda said, representing the Office of Credit Risk Management on behalf of our director, Susan Strike, as well as Paul Kerwin, the supervisory financial analyst for the 504 loan program. And I'm here with Tanya Miller, one of our contractors who has an expertise in a number of areas, but particularly the Forms 159, which we'll be talking about in just a little bit. So just a little overview. The mission of OCRM here is to ensure the integrity and effectiveness of SBA's lending programs by managing portfolio risk, monitoring lender performance, and enforcing lender program requirements, which is why we want to give this presentation to you. So with that in mind, I wanted to speak today a little bit about the SBA Form 159. We've recently updated this form, and as of November 1st of last year, this is the version, the current version of the form is required. In addition, there are new submission requirements with SOP 5010-5K. Those have come into effect as of April 1st. And we've also noticed a number of common errors in our reviews that we conduct as OCRM. So for all these reasons, we wanted to dive in a little bit and discuss some of these requirements in greater detail. So first of all, what needs to be reported in Form 159? Form 159 is for fees, so any outside packagers not engaged by the CDC, they may be reimbursed by the borrower. However, those fees must be documented on the SBA Form 159. Any fees in excess of $2,500 must include an itemization of both the hourly rate and the activities that are actually performed to the work done on that Form 159. Those fees must be reasonable and customary, and that's a specific standard that's spelled out in the SOP, and that's located on page 166 of the SOP if you want more information on that. Regarding packaging, just to give a little overview, the maximum fee that can be charged on a percentage basis is $30,000. There's no maximum fee for the hourly rate, but as stated, any fee over $2,500 must be supported with both the work performed and the hourly rate. Additionally, all referral fees, whether paid by the CDC or received by the CDC in connection with a 504 loan, those must be reported on the SBA Form 159, and we also require a separate Form 159 executed for each agent. All right, so what are the new submission requirements? For loans that have closed since April 1st, 2019, that's the effective date of SOP 5010-5K, the CDC must upload that 159 into E-Tran within 30 days of the initial disbursement of the loan. For loans closed prior to that date, the CDC may either include a copy of the 159 in the annual report, or they can go ahead and upload that 159 into E-Tran. And just as an aside, during this transition period, we do recommend that all CDCs with their annual report include a list of the loans that required a 159 or just a simple statement that there were no 159s rather, just so that we can keep track of everything. CDCs are required to retain an original signature unless signed electronically in accordance with the standards of Appendix 8 in the new SOP. But please make sure that you include that in your files for compliance review purposes. And just as a note, SBA reserves the right to review any fees charged to the applicant. As I mentioned, those fees must be reasonable and customary. So what doesn't go on the 159? Well, out-of-pocket expenses do not need to be reported on your 159. So what are out-of-pocket expenses? These are any necessary expenses that are a result of SBA policy requirements. So that could include direct costs, things like UCC filings, recording fees, etc. It can also include document preparation that must be done by a third party. So that would be something done by an attorney, environmental professional, etc. And I do want to note that even though those do not go on the 159, those costs must be itemized and they should be kept in the loan file for compliance review purposes. So as I said during our reviews, we've noticed a few common errors that we see with the 159. So these are a few of the common clerical errors that we see. The form being signed by the borrower before it's completed by the CDC. We do want the borrower to be aware of the fees. That's part of the purpose of the form, so we do want you to complete the form before it's signed by the borrower. Additionally, some other items are a missing SBA loan number, the type of agent not identified, type of service provided not being identified, and itemized services not being provided for packaging fees in excess of $2,500. And we're hoping that with the new 159 that was required as of November 1st, that some of these issues will go away because the form is a little more straightforward and a little easier to get some of those nitty-gritty details. And now just to wrap up with some of the best practices, we do want CDCs to retain documentation of the original signature to support the upload to ETRAN. We also want CDCs to retain documentation for the testing against SAM, so the System of Awards Management, the Excluded Party List System, EPLS, or any similar system that might succeed that. All right, so finally, just to say, our job at OCRM is to help lending partners understand how to fill SBA requirements. I hope this presentation was helpful in that regard. If you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to Susan or Paul, or to your assigned financial analyst, so that would be either myself, Rubina, or Shannon, depending on your region. And thank you very much. That's all from us.
So now we're going to enter into the Q&A for everyone, and then after the Q&A, we'll talk about some upcoming events. So, Ginger, are you ready to start us off on the Q&A?
You bet. So our first question is as follows. In regards to the new 2-year rule for internal audits, when does this begin? If our CBC had an audit in August 2018, can we then wait until 2020, or do we need to start the 2-year rotation this year in 2019?
Repeat that again.
When they say internal audit, that would appear to me to be their independent loan review.
Got it. I would say that if you just had one in August 2018, you can then wait until 2020. As of April 1st, the requirement is every 2 years.
All right. And we have a question asking if the slides will be sent out, and yes, they will. We'll also be resending them in 2 to 4 business days, along with a link to the live recording. Next question is, if a client is doing a 504 loan, can the client use a 7A or any loan to meet the 10% equity requirement?
No.
An easy answer. Do we have any other questions? Somebody's asking about the version of the SOP on the website. If you're at sba.gov/document and you navigate to 5010 on that site, you should be able to download a version of the PDF that allows you to copy and paste it. And you can tell if you have the correct document because the end of the file name that downloads will say copy-paste. If not, feel free to send me an email, ginger.allen@sba.gov, and I'll send you a copy. I've heard of somebody, actually an internal person here, who was trying to access that on Internet Explorer, and he was not able to manipulate the document on Explorer. So if you're having that issue, try it on Edge or Firefox or Chrome or one of the other browsers.
So we have a follow-up question on the 7A question. The 504 loan program does allow borrowed borrowers' equity, and I think that's sort of where that's coming from. The intent of the borrowed borrowers' equity is that you may have some situations where you have local communities that have revolving loan funds, and then that is the type of local incentives that can be offered. But it really wasn't intended for us to have a 7A loan guarantee on the bank-borrowed 504 equity injection.
Okay, we have a question that Sherry's going to field for us. The question is, in regards to the 159 form upload, if the link is not yet established through Ventures for E-Tran, how else can we provide the form?
They can go into E-Tran and they can upload it either through E-Tran or they can fill out the information on the E-Tran screen and E-Tran will generate the form. So they can use the E-Tran web screens.
All right, so E-Tran web screens is the answer for when you have difficulties through Ventures. Is that a solution at all through Ventures, or do they need to go through the E-Tran web?
Ventures is working on a solution for this, but they can always go into E-Tran, even if whether they're using Ventures or not.
Okay, great.
But their data will be out of sync with Ventures if they do that.
So, Hien, here's a question for you and your team. This is regarding the SBA size standard. And the question is, does the net worth need to be taken from interim statements or the year-end tax returns? If so, are interim financial statements required on affiliates?
It needs to be the year-end. Interims, they're not required on affiliates, but the size standard needs to be from the two most recent year-end statements.
All right, and we've got a question on, looks like 159. If the CDC paid a loan referral fee by the TPL for referring them a loan, can the fee be paid based on a percentage of the loan? And if so, does the CDC need to itemize its services?
So it can be paid based on a percentage of the loan, is my understanding. However, there are limits on that, and as I said, page 166 in the SOP will have more details on the specific what fees you can charge. Oh, Tanya.
Also, just to add, it cannot be contingent on the approval of the loan.
Follow-up question on the Form 159. If there is no referral fee to report, do we still need to have a Form 159 signed indicating that it's not applicable?
The answer is no. If there's no 159, there's no need for a 159.
All right. Question is, can 504 loans be submitted using SBA 1? And no.
For sure.
The answer is no.
To go back to interest response, one of the things the CDC could do for the OCRM reviewer is to have just a simple statement in the credit memorandum that no 159s were involved in this project. That way the OCRM reviewer would not be looking for the supplemental 159. That seems to us to be a more elegant answer than having several 159s or a form for every file.
All right, I'm going to read this question aloud and see if we have an answer. The corporate governance in CAVS has the annual report requirements and can be uploaded. Can we use this feature, and if so, is this all we need to do for annual report submission? Do we also send a complete report to district?
So the corporate governance in CAVS has all the documents now required for the annual report. So OCRM will you'll upload the documents if you're participating in that pilot. You'll upload the documents into CAS, and then you'll contact OCRM, and OCRM will get the documents from the portal. You don't need to send them separately.
In the past, some district offices.
So you don't need to send it to whatever process you had is still the same. So if you send it to the district, if that was also part of your process, I guess you still need to send them to the district. But you wouldn't have, CDC annual report at SBA.gov, who gets that? OCRM. So you don't need to, you would email CDC at annual reports and say, I've uploaded them into CAS.
And some district offices want to see them and some don't, so I would coordinate with your district office to see is it necessary to send them your annual report.
Right.
I think they're still required to do the operational review.
Right, the process of the annual report is still the same. The only thing that's been replaced is the way that the documents get to OCRM. Instead of having to send this file or carrier pigeon or whatever else you use, you now upload them into CAS and OCRM pulls them down.
Okay, we have another question, Sherry, probably for you. There appears to be a connection issue with Ventures and the authorization wizard. Is this being fixed? Is SBA aware?
SBA is working with Ventures and several others to get the authorization. Right now, the 504 authorization that's in E-Tran is not in very good shape, but we're working to get it. That shouldn't be the authorization that you're using, but we're working with Ventures on that and others.
All right, Ian, here's one for your team. If an affiliate business is partially owned by a trust that's in the name of the parents of the other owners of the affiliate company, must that trust be evaluated in the dollar value net worth by standards?
Can you say that again, Ginger?
Sure. It's a question about size standards as it relates to affiliates.
But somebody's phone is no longer on mute. Can you please mute your phones?
Probably coming from myself.
No.
Okay, so are we back?
Can you read it? Go ahead.
Yeah. If an affiliate business is partially owned by a trust that is in the name of the parents of the other owners of the affiliate company, must that trust be evaluated in the dollar value size standard? Partially owned by a trust.
Yeah, I think they have to send that in. We can't answer that based on just that information alone.
Right. At our last Connect call, we sent out, with the after call documents, an affiliation handout that SLPC and Babak Hosseini put together. If anybody needs that, please feel free to send me an email requesting that, and be happy to resend that out to you, ginger.allen@sba.gov. And it walks you through everything you need to do when you've got affiliates and need to make a size determination. Next question is again about referral fees. Am I understanding correctly that CDCs can pay a referral fee to a banker for bringing them a 504 deal? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that's correct.
It would just need to be listed on the 159.
Mm-hmm.
Next question, can the district office access the annual report through CAS?
Not currently.
Ian, we were being asked for a clarification on the interim financial statements that we just discussed. Are interim financials needed at all for credit analysis? The 1244 checklist does not call for interims on affiliates. Question mark. Do we still have to submit them?
They're not called for on affiliates, but we need the interim statements for the operating company and the EPC.
Okay, here's a good question. In disclosing the 100% ownership, do you also need Social Security or EIN numbers on each owner? Who wants to take this?
We are asking that 100% ownership be fully disclosed in E-Trans. And we believe that it's prudent lending practice that you provide us with a unique identifier for those individuals. Not only because that helps you in analyzing this specific project to make sure that it's eligible and that you're not exceeding the limitation, but by helping your borrowers fully disclose themselves, you're protecting your borrowers' right to their full access for future projects. So you're being an advocate for your borrower by making sure that our records are accurate and complete.
Add to that. Okay. That's all the questions we have right now. I'll give you guys a minute to type in more.
We've had a couple come in that we probably feel are best to handle offline because they're just one-on-one deal issues that will help people live offline.
Okay, Lauren, would you mind going to the phone to see if anyone wants to phone in a question?
If you'd like to ask a question over the phone, please dial #2 on your telephone keypad. You'll hear a notification when your line is unmuted, and at that time, please state your question. Okay, we do have a caller on the phone. Please go ahead.
Is now unmuted. Linda, hi, it's Mike DePalian. I'm certified. I'm sorry, I got distracted. Did you say that we needed to try to get social or TINs on every owner of any affiliate that's involved with the deal, or just the OC and the EPC?
No, that's correct. Every owner, Mike.
We do
have a legal opinion. We do have a legal opinion for what if it's an entity. It's what would be the appropriate unique identifier for the entity. But we're working on that with legal, and we'll give further clarification on that on upcoming calls.
All right, because there was just an issue where somebody said, I've got multiple affiliates that have nothing to do, many of the owners have nothing to do with the other, the OC or the EPC, and they're refusing to provide their socials because they're not involved in the transaction. What do you do in a case like that?
You send an email to your 504 program chief and you ask for assistance, and I coordinate with our legal counsel. Or, to get a faster answer, you could probably coordinate directly with your local district counsel and get a local opinion from your district counsel instead of having to go through headquarters counsel.
Thank you. Thanks.
Lauren, any other callers?
We do not have any other phone questions at this time.
Okay, so we have a lender match question, and that is, will district offices be provided with information about the program enhancements so we can update our enrolled lenders?
Yes, we are working on a PowerPoint as I speak.
Perfect. Awesome. All right, I think that's, one last question. How do we get on the weekly SLPC mailing list? Ian, do you want to address that?
Yes, if they can send an email to me, and I will add to the distribution list every week. Hien, H-I-E-N .N-G-U-Y-E-N @SBA.gov.
All right, sounds good. As always, if you have any follow-up questions, feel free to reach out to any of us who spoke today or to the chiefs. And thank you for joining us. Linda, you want to?
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. And now Ginger's going to walk us through some upcoming calls and dates and emphasize some date changes.
So the next call that we have is for 7A, and that's on July 9th. And as always, 7A asks you to pre-register, and there's the link. We in 504 are going to that process as well, and we've also changed the dates of our next two upcoming 504 calls. So the next 504 Connect call is on September 24th, followed by December 17th. A little later in the month, so that gives us an opportunity to have the most updated data when we talk to you at the beginning of our calls. The links there will allow you to pre-register, and once you do that, you'll be sent an email with the login instructions like you're used to seeing.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. One thing that we have also, too, in coming attractions is Nancy Capel will be working with us later in the summer to set up a closing webinar.
All right, thanks, everybody. Talk to you next time.
That concludes our conference. Thank you for using AT&T Event Conferencing Enhanced. You may now disconnect.